My wife thought her secret was safe. Every laundry break, every sweet smile, every excuse to slip away. I saw it all. I just didn't understand how far it went until the lawn sagged, and I found the trapdoor. The neighbor hadn't just been flirting. He dug a tunnel under my house, and in that dirt-lined chamber, my wife was already sleeping with him. I always knew something was off about my neighbor, Greg. From the very first day he moved in with his too white smile and his habit of complimenting everyone's lawn, I had a gut feeling. But it wasn't his comments about azaleas or his tips on fertilizer that got into my skin. It was the way he spoke to my wife. Sweet, too sweet, like honey dripping over poison. "Good morning, Anna," he called with offense, his voice low and cheerful, as though they shared some secret I wasn't invited to. And she, "God help me," she'd answer back, softly, sweetly. Her voice never sounded like that when she talked to me. With me it was functional. "Did you take the trash out?" Or, "We need milk." But with him, it was like music, lilting, a playful little rise at the end of her words. I told her once, no, several times, don't talk to him. Don't even say hello. She laughed nervously like I'd made a joke, but I meant every syllable. I work from home. That gives me an advantage. While the rest of the men on the street are gone, tied to desks or job sites, I am here in my little office overlooking the yard. My eyes are always open. I watch. I count the minutes she's outside. I know how long laundry takes. I know the rhythm of her footsteps on the kitchen floor. At first, I thought I was overreacting. Maybe it was all in my head, this idea that she enjoyed his attention. But then I started noticing things. How she lingered by the line when she was hanging clothes. How she brushed her hair before stepping out, even if it was just to water the plants. And then one morning, everything changed. The lawn sagged, just a little at first. A soft depression near the back corner, like the earth had exhaled and settled. I didn't think much of it. Maybe the soil was loose. Maybe gophers. But by the end of the week, it was worse. The ground had dipped a full foot, maybe more, 30 centimeters at least, and it was spreading, like some underground beast had swallowed the dirt from below. I couldn't focus. Not on work, not on anything. My eyes kept drifting back to that sagging spot. Anna walked past it, carrying a basket of laundry, her hips swaying a way that made me clench my fists. Did she know? Was she in on it? That night, after she went to bed, I slipped outside with a flashlight. The air smelled of damp earth. I crouched near the sagging patch, pressing my palm against it. It felt hollow. The flashlight beam flickered across the grass, and for a moment, I swore I heard something. A faint scrape, metal on stone. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was digging. I leaned closer, ear to the ground like some deranged scout. Yes, there it was again. A rhythmic scrape, followed by a muffled thud. My skin prickled. It was insane, impossible, but undeniable. The neighbor was under my lawn. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the window, staring out into the dark yard, waiting for what? For him to pop up like a mole? For Anna to sneak outside? She stirred in her sleep, murmured something I couldn't catch. I wondered if she was dreaming of him. The next morning, I watched her carefully. She moved to the kitchen with infuriating calm, humming to herself as she poured coffee. I wanted to shake her, to scream, I know something's going on. But instead I smiled stiffly, pretending, always pretending. When she carried the laundry basket out back, I followed with my eyes. She paused at the sagging spot, shifted her weight, and for just a moment, the ground beneath her seemed to tremble. She didn't react. She didn't even look down, but her lips curled into the faintest smile. That smile nearly killed me. It wasn't for me. It hadn't been for a long time. Something was happening beneath my house, and my wife was part of it. By the time she came back in, I'd made my decision. I was going to dig. I was going to find out what lay beneath my lawn, what my charming neighbor was up to, and why my wife's voice turned to velvet whenever he said her name. If I had to tear up every inch of soil, I would. I had no idea then how deep the betrayal went. No idea that my quiet suburban life sat on top of something ridiculous, obscene, and humiliating. But I would find out. Oh, yes, I would. I couldn't get the sound out of my head. That faint scrape, the muffled thud, the unmistakable rhythm of someone working underground. The absurdity of it gnawed at me. My neighbor wasn't just sweet-talking my wife. He was tunneling his way into my marriage. Literally. By morning, I was half-mad from sleeplessness. I sat at my desk, hands on the keyboard, pretending to work, but my eyes kept flicking to the window, to that soft depression in the grass. The sagging had grown overnight, like the earth was sinking beneath its own shame. Anna breezed into the room, hair tied back, wearing a summer dress that clung just a little too much around her hips. She leaned over me to kiss my cheek. I caught the faintest whiff of her perfume, floral, distracting. My gut twisted with suspicion. Did she put that on for me? Or for him? "You're quiet this morning," she said. Her eyes lingered on mine, then darted away too quickly. "I didn't sleep." "Oh, why not?" She tilted her head. A picture of innocence. "Dreams." I lied. She smiled faintly, that same private smile I'd seen yesterday near the laundry line. Then she picked up the basket, heavy with clothes, and headed toward the back door. My pulse spiked. Laundry again. Always laundry. I followed her with my eyes, every step cataloged like evidence. She disappeared into the yard, and I felt a sudden fury at how little control I had. I grabbed the shovel. The metal felt cold in my hands as I walked out to the sagging patch. The morning sun lit the dew on the grass, mocking me with its cheerfulness. My wife was humming faintly as she pinned sheets on the line. I drove the shovel into the earth with a grunt. The ground gave too easily, like it had already been disturbed. Anna glanced at me. "What are you doing?" "Fixing the lawn," I said flatly. She hesitated, her hands tightening on a wet sheet, then forced a laugh. "Since when you care about landscaping?" "Since I realized you were sneaking away through it," I thought bitterly. The shovel struck something solid. Not rock, not root, wood. I froze, sweat already running down my back. I scraped the dirt away carefully, and there it was, a flat surface, planks nailed together crudely but firmly. My heart slammed in my chest. A trapdoor. Anna's voice cut the silence. "What's that?" Her tone was too casual. "I don't know yet." My own voice cracked with tension. Her eyes flickered, the smallest shift, and I knew. She knew. I pried the edge up. The wood groaned, hinges whining, and a puff of stale, damp air rose from below. I coughed, gagging at the mix of earth, sweat, and something sweet, cheap cologne, the kind Greg always wore. My stomach turned. The darkness gaped beneath me, a black mouth in my backyard. I shone my flashlight down. Dirt walls reinforced with plywood. A ladder. A tunnel. Jesus Christ. I whispered. Anna dropped the sheet she was holding. It landed in the grass with a wet slap. "Don't," she said quickly, her voice trembling now. Just leave it. Leave it? Leave it?" My hands shook as I held the trapdoor open. "What the hell is this?" Her face flushed, guilty as a thief caught red-handed. "It's not what you think." But I already knew it was exactly what I thought. I lowered myself, one foot on the ladder, my breath coming in ragged bursts. The air was close, damp, clinging to my skin. My heart hammered like I was descending into hell itself. The tunnel stretched forward, narrow but reinforced. I could see faint light bulbs strung along the ceiling, powered by an orange extension cord that snaked back toward the neighbor's yard. This wasn't a burrow. This was construction. I crawled forward, dirt brushing my shoulders, my mind racing. How long had he been digging? Weeks? Months? While I mowed the lawn above, while I sat at my desk, thinking I was keeping watch, Greg had been inching closer under my very feet. A soft sound reached me. Laughter. Low, intimate, unmistakably Anna's. My blood went cold. I shuffled forward faster, the tunnel curving slightly, until the walls opened into a crude little chamber. I froze, my flashlight catching on something absurd. Carpet scraps laid across the dirt floor. A mattress shoved against the wall. Fairy lights strung haphazardly, glowing weakly. And there, against a makeshift table with 2 glasses of wine, sat my wife and Greg. Her dress strap had slipped from her shoulder. His hand was too close to hers. The sight was grotesque and ridiculous all at once, an underground love nest cobbled together with the dedication of a madman. Neither of them saw me. Not yet. I clenched the flashlight, torn between fury and hysterical laughter. My wife's secret was literally beneath me, and it looked like a teenager's hideout. I wanted to scream, to storm in, but something held me back. Curiosity. Some sick fascination with just how far this absurd betrayal would go. So I stayed there in the shadows, watching and listening. I crouched in the tunnel, dirt pressing against my back, knees aching, heart pounding so hard I swore it would shake the fairy lights above their little underground love nest. There they were, my wife and Greg, seated like royalty in a mud palace, sipping cheap wine in mismatched glasses as though it were some Parisian bistro. I should have burst in, should have screamed, flipped the table, dragged Anne out by the wrist, and beaten Greg with my flashlight until his smile cracked. But I didn't. I stayed still, quiet, pressed against the damp earth like a soldier on reconnaissance. Some sick part of me needed to see it, to hear it, to collect undeniable proof. Anna leaned forward, laughing softly at something Greg whispered. Her laugh. It wasn't the clipped, polite chuckle she gave me at dinner when I tried to tell a joke. No, this laugh was warm, open, full of air and light. It stung worse than a slap. Greg reached across the little table, his hand brushing her wrist. She didn't pull away. She tilted her head, her hair falling over one eye, that subtle tilt I'd once thought belonged only to me. The wine glass trembled in my grip. I hadn't realized I'd been clutching it so tightly until the rim cracked faintly under my thumb. I eased my hand back, dirt crumbling against my palm. Your husband, Greg said, his voice carrying just enough I could hear. He watches you like a hawk, doesn't he? Anna's eyes flickered, uncertain. He's protective. Protective. That was the word she used? Not jealous. Not obsessive. Protective. As if I were some overzealous guard dog tied to a post while she slipped off to play with the neighbor. Greg chuckled, low and confident. If he knew you were down here. Her smile curled. He'd kill us both. They both laughed. Together. As if the danger was part of the thrill. My chest burned with fury, but beneath it was something I hated admitting. Arousal. The forbidden. The secrecy. The way her voice softened around him. It twisted inside me like a knife and a caress all at once. Anna leaned back, crossing her legs, the hem of her dress sliding up just enough to show the pale line of her thigh. Greg's eyes dropped immediately. He didn't even try to hide it. And she, God help me, she let him look. The tension thickened. I felt it in my throat, in my stomach, in the pulse between my temples. Dirt pressed cold against my spine, but my skin burned hot. Greg stood, stepping closer to her side. His hand traced the edge of her bare shoulder, slow, deliberate. She closed her eyes, leaning into the touch, her lips parting. My nails dug into my palms until the skin broke. I wanted to leap forward, to smash his head against the plywood wall. But I stayed put, a voyeur in my own nightmare. Anna whispered, Not now, he's home. Greg smiled. He's always home, and he never sees a thing. Her lips curved faintly, betraying her pleasure at the secrecy. She lifted her wine glass again, sipping slowly, like she wanted to prolong the agony. Every nerve in my body screamed. The absurdity of it nearly drove me mad. An underground burrow, fairy lights, cheap cologne mixing with damp soil, and yet here they were, my wife and neighbor, glowing like teenagers sneaking into a basement. I backed away slowly, breast shallow, dirt cascading from my shoes with each movement. I couldn't watch more. Not now. If I stayed, I'd explode, and the comedy of their molehill romance would turn into a crime scene. Climbing the ladder back into the yard, the air hit me like a slap. I slammed the trapdoor shut and kicked dirt over it, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold a shovel. The house loomed in front of me, bright windows mocking my ignorance. Inside, Anna was humming again by the time I returned, as if she hadn't just been sipping wine with him beneath the earth. She looked up from folding towels, smiling faintly. You've been outside a while. I stared at her, words caught in my throat. Did she really think I didn't know? Did she believe I was that blind? But I said nothing. I couldn't, not yet, because this wasn't over. The tunnel was deeper than I'd thought, and so was her betrayal. And if I was going to catch them, truly catch them, I needed to go further, deeper. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a spy, and they had no idea how closely I was watching. I couldn't look at the backyard the same way anymore. Every time I glanced out the window, the grass seemed to ripple with secrets. That sagging spot, patched clumsily with dirt after my night raid, stared back at me like a wound. Beneath it was a whole other world, one where my wife laughed sweeter, smiled warmer, and shared her wine with another man. I sat at my desk, but the spreadsheet on my screen blurred. I typed a few numbers, deleted them, typed them again. My ears strained for sounds, the faint scrape, the shuffle of dirt, the muffled laughter that might rise to the earth like ghosts of betrayal. Anna moved through the kitchen behind me. I listened to the clink of dishes, the soft swish of her dress. My mind replayed the way she crossed her legs in that tunnel, how Greg's eyes devoured her. The memory made my stomach churn, but also pulled at something darker. Desire tangled with disgust. my body betraying me, the way hers had. I started carrying the shovel like a weapon. I leaned against the back door, ready to pry open that trapdoor at a moment's notice. Sometimes I stood over the spot, one foot pressing on the soft earth, imagining him squirming below as I stomped, crushing his little mole kingdom. But the truth was, I didn't want to collapse it. Not yet. I wanted evidence. Proof. A perfect moment to catch them. So I began a plan. I mapped the laundry schedule. Mondays and Thursdays were the heaviest, baskets filled, sheets replaced, clothes folded. Those were her longest trips outside. I marked the times on a notepad, tracking how long she disappeared. 7 minutes here, 12 minutes there. Far too long for just hanging damp socks. I checked Greg's patterns too. He mowed on Sundays, tinkered with his grill on Wednesdays, pretended to fix his gutters whenever Anna was sunbathing. But the digging, the tunneling, that happened late at night, when he thought no one was watching. I could hear it now, clear as a heartbeat, scraping beneath the soil while Anna slept in our bed. One night, I pressed my ear to the floorboards of our bedroom. The faint vibration traveled up through the wood, rhythmic and obscene, like the pulse of an underground machine. My wife turned in her sleep, mumbling something I couldn't make out. For a sick moment, I thought she'd whispered his name. The next morning, I tried to confront her without confronting her. Strange noises last night, I said casually over coffee. She blinked, feigning innocence. Noises from the ground, like digging. Her spoon paused in the sugar bowl. A flicker of panic crossed her face before she forced a laugh. You and your imagination. Imagination. That word cut deeper than any shovel could. So I decided to test her. That afternoon, I announced I had a conference call and locked myself in my office. In reality, I crept out the side door, barefoot on the grass, and circled around to the sagging spot. I crouched low, hidden by the hedges, the shovel clutched tight. Anna appeared moments later, basket in hand. She looked around once, too quick, too nervous, then knelt by the line. She hung 2 shirts, 3 towels, humming that damn little tune again. Then she paused. Her hand brushed the grass above the trapdoor. A secret signal. The ground shifted. The wood creaked faintly. My breath caught, but she didn't go down. Not yet. She lingered, adjusting the sheets as though waiting for something. Finally, she shook her head, picked up the basket, and returned inside. I stayed frozen until my knees screamed with pain. Only then did I crawl forward and press my ear against the trapdoor. Silence. Empty silence. He hadn't come up. Not this time. I told myself to be patient, to wait, but patience was wearing thin. That night, I dreamt of bursting through the tunnel while they were mid-embrace, catching them tangled together in their ridiculous subterranean boudoir. In my dream, I dragged Greg by the collar, his face smeared with dirt, while Anna screamed. Sometimes she screamed in protest, sometimes in pleasure. The line between rage and arousal blurred until I woke in a sweat, fists clenched around the sheets. The absurdity of it made me laugh, bitter and sharp. My wife's secret wasn't hidden in phone records or hotel receipts. It was under my goddamn lawn. The simplest, most ridiculous betrayal imaginable. And I was going to catch them in the act. Not by accident, not by suspicion, but with undeniable proof. I'd dig when they dug, spy when they thought themselves alone. I'd follow that tunnel to the very heart of their filth and absurd romance. Because if they wanted to play moles, then fine, I'd be the hawk. And they wouldn't even see me coming. I had memorized her rhythm. The clink of the washing machine lid, the shuffle of the basket against the floor, the back door creaking open. These weren't ordinary domestic sounds anymore. They were codes, signals in a secret language. Thursday afternoon, 2:13 p.m. sharp. The laundry basket was full, almost too full, sheets billowing over the edge like sails. She carried it with both hands, her hips moving in that infuriating, unconscious sway. I sat at my desk, watching her through blinds, pretending to type. She crossed the yard, humming again, always humming. A little tune, light and careless, as though she hadn't a secret in the world. But I knew better. My pulse quickened as she paused at the sagging patch. She set the basket down, crouched, and brushed her fingers against the grass in that subtle way I'd seen before. The ground shifted, a faint creak. The trapdoor opened like the lid of some grotesque jewelry box, and she slipped inside, lifting her dress just enough to keep it from brushing dirt. I caught a flash of thigh, pale in the afternoon sun, before the wood dropped shut above her. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. I was out the door, before I realized I'd moved. My feet hit the grass softly, years of paranoia teaching me stealth. I crouched at the trapdoor, pressing my palm flat against it. I could feel the faint vibration of voices, muffled laughter, drifting up through the soil. Slowly, carefully, I lifted it. The stale underground air rushed out again. Earth sweat, cologne. I lowered myself onto the ladder, my heart hammering so loud I was certain they would hear it. The tunnel stretched ahead, lit by weak bulbs strung on cords. I moved silently, step by careful step, dirt brushing my shoulders. Every nerve screamed at me to turn back, but the pull of obsession dragged me forward. The voices grew clearer. Greg's low, smooth tone, Anna's softer, playful replies. My stomach twisted at the sound of her laughter, echoing off dirt walls. And then the chamber opened before me, more ridiculous than I remembered. Fairy lights twinkling weakly, as though they believed themselves stars. A mattress on the floor, covered with sheets suspiciously familiar. Our sheets. A table scavenged from somewhere, cluttered with wine bottles and a half-burned candle. Greg stood close to her, their glasses raised. He touched her arm lightly as though claiming her, his body angled possessively. She leaned into it, smiling in that way she never smiled at me anymore. I pressed myself into the shadow, watching, my throat dry. "You shouldn't have come today," Greg murmured, his hand sliding down her arm. "He's always working," Anna said with a dismissive shrug, staring at his computer, pretending to be busy. My chest clenched. Pretending. That's what she thought of me? The hours I spent watching, guarding, sacrificing, all dismissed as nothing. Greg laughed softly. "If only he knew what you were really doing with your laundry breaks." Her lips parted in a smile. "He'll never know." They clinked their glasses together, and the sound pierced me like a knife. I wanted to rush forward, to tear them apart, but instead I stayed rooted, watching, recording every detail in my mind like evidence for a trial no one else would ever attend. Greg brushed a strand of hair from her face, his thumb grazing her cheek. She closed her eyes at the touch, tilting her head just slightly toward him. The intimacy was unbearable, obscene in its casualness. The absurdity nearly made me laugh. A secret underground hideout, lit by fairy lights, smelling of mildew and cheap cologne. And yet here they were, wrapped in the illusion of romance. Anna set her glass down. "We don't have long." Greg's eyes gleamed. "Then let's not waste it." He leaned closer, his lips hovering near hers. My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I dug my nails into the dirt wall, torn between rage and fascination. Her breath caught, soft, trembling. She didn't pull away. The air thickened with tension, desire, betrayal. And I stayed there in the shadows, watching, every second driving me deeper into madness. This wasn't just an affair. It was theater, a performance stage beneath my house, using my sheets, my wife, my sanity, and I was the unwilling audience. But not for long. I crept back up the tunnel before they noticed me, each step heavier than the last. By the time I emerged into the sunlight, I was drenched in sweat. The lawn looked so ordinary, so harmless, it almost made me laugh. Almost, because I knew what lay beneath. And next time, I wouldn't just watch. Next time, I'd act. I couldn't concentrate on anything else. Not work, not meals, not even sleep. The house felt like a hollow shell now, a facade built over betrayal. My real marriage existed down there in the dirt, strung up with fairy lights and cheap wine. The image of that chamber clung to me like damp soil. The mattress, the flickering bulbs, the table crowded with bottles. It was absurd and humiliating all at once. My wife, my Anna, reduced to sneaking underground like some suburban Juliet to meet her mole of a Romeo. I started pacing at night, back and forth, from the kitchen window to the back door, watching the lawn. Sometimes I pressed my ear to ground like an animal, straining for voices or footsteps. I could hear faint vibrations, the hum of activity, though maybe it was only my heartbeat. One evening I gave in to temptation and crept down again, not confront. No, not yet, but to observe, to measure how far their lunacy had gone. The trapdoor groaned under my weight as I opened it. The ladder creaked with each step, lowering me into stale underground air. My flashlight beam cut through the tunnel, bouncing off dirt walls lined with plywood. I moved slowly, silently, the way a hunter stalks prey, and then the chamber opened before me again. But it had changed. It wasn't just a hole with a mattress anymore. Greg had been busy, very busy. He'd strung patterned fabric along the walls like wallpaper, hung little frame pictures, crooked prints of beaches and sunsets, as if dirt walls could be transformed into a holiday getaway. A rug now covered the floor, warm but soft, probably stolen from a garage. And in the corner, a humming mini fridge glowed faintly, plugged into that same orange extension cord. The absurdity nearly knocked me off my feet. This wasn't just an affair. It was interior design. I crouched in the shadows, staring at the pathetic underground love nest. And then I heard footsteps, voices. Anna entered first, her dress swishing, carrying a folded sheet. She spread it carefully over the mattress, smoothing the corners like she was making our bed at home. My throat tightened. Greg followed, holding a bottle of wine in one hand and a battery-powered speaker in the other. He set them on the table, pressed a button, and music began to play. Soft jazz, tinny but unmistakable. My wife laughed lightly. "You've outdone yourself." He bowed, grinning. "For you? Anything." I bit my fist to keep from growling. They sat together on the mattress, close, shoulders touching. Greg poured wine into glasses. She sipped, her lips stained red, then leaned into him with a sigh that twisted my stomach. "You shouldn't risk it," she whispered. "If he ever found out." Greg smirked, brushing his thumb across her cheek. "He won't. He's too busy watching spreadsheets." My hand shook so badly the flashlight nearly slipped. Spreadsheets. That's what they thought of me. An afterthought, a joke, while they built their ridiculous palace beneath my feet. But I couldn't look away. She tilted her head, exposing her neck. He leaned in, kissing her skin lightly, slowly. Her eyes fluttered shut. A soft sigh escaped her lips, intimate and obscene in the cramped space. I wanted to rush forward, to tear them apart, but my legs felt nailed to the floor. Rage battled fascination, and fascination won. Greg's hand slid along her thigh, lifted her dress just enough to make my chest seize. She didn't stop him. She leaned closer, lips brushing his ear, whispering something I couldn't catch. The tunnel seemed to pulse with heat, though the air was cold. I was sweating, dirt sticking to my palms, my heart beating so violently I thought it would echo through the chamber. And then the music skipped, the speaker buzzing. The fairy lights flickered. The whole scene teetered on the edge of collapse, ridiculous, fragile, laughable. It saved me. The absurdity of it all snapped me back. This wasn't passion. This wasn't romance. It was a parody, a farce staged by fools who thought themselves lovers while they rolled around in dirt. I backed away slowly, retreating to the tunnel, every step fueled by a new resolve. It wasn't enough to spy anymore. I needed to expose them, to rip their silly fantasy wide open and make them choke on it. I would bide my time. But soon, very soon, I would spring my trap. And when I did, the fairy lights would go dark. I used to think of Greg as just a nuisance, the kind of neighbor who waved too much, smiled too wide, gave unsolicited advice about lawn care. But now I saw him for what he truly was, a lunatic with a shovel and a taste for someone else's wife. It wasn't only the affair anymore. It was the tunnel itself that gnawed at me, the sheer lunacy of it. Who in their right mind would spend months burrowing like a mole just to sip wine beneath another man's lawn? And yet, somehow he had done it, and I had let it happen. I couldn't escape the sound of it at night, that faint scrape and thud, the rhythm of progress. Every strike of his spade was like a nail hammered into my skull. I imagined him wiping sweat from his brow, grinning to himself in the dirt, thinking of Anna waiting for him with a bottle of Merlot. I started carrying a notebook, not for work anymore, but for notes on their activity. I marked down times, durations, noises, when she left the house, how long she was gone, when I heard him digging, when I saw his garage light flicker on. The notebook became my Bible, my proof, but notes weren't enough. I needed something undeniable. So I began to prepare a trap. My first thought was to collapse the tunnel, just dig into it from above and let the soil bury their little love nest. But then what? Anna would scream. The neighbors would come running, and I'd be the lunatic explaining why I'd sabotaged my own lawn. No, I needed something cleaner, smarter. I researched cameras late at night, the blue glow of my monitor painting the walls. Tiny hidden devices, motion-activated. I imagined planting them in the chamber, capturing every pathetic sip of wine, every touch, every stolen kiss. Then, one day, sliding the footage across the kitchen table for Anna to watch, letting the absurdity condemn her more than I ever could. But the risk of being caught planning them, that thought made my skin crawl. So I considered another option, confrontation. Not with words. Words were useless now, but with presence. To step out of the shadows one night, catch the mid-embrace, and let the dirt walls echo with their shame. I rehearsed it in my mind 100 times. How I would stand, how my voice would sound. Cold, commanding. How Greg's smile would falter. How Anna's face would flush with horror. But every time I pictured it, something inside me twisted. Because of my imagination, she didn't always look horrified. Sometimes she looked thrilled. Sometimes she clung to him tighter, as though my rage was nothing compared to his touch. The thought made me want to tear the walls down with my bare hands. That evening, I gave in to the pull again, down the trapdoor, through the tunnel, into the shadows of the chamber. They were already there, Anna lying back on the mattress, Greg sitting beside her, gesturing animatedly with his hands. He was explaining something about airflow, ducts he'd installed, little fans humming faintly to keep the tunnel from suffocating them. He spoke like a craftsman, proud of his ridiculous achievement. She laughed, brushing his arm. "You're insane." He grinned. "Insanely in love, maybe." My stomach lurched. He pointed to the fairy lights. "Solar panels on my shed roof. Enough to power these for hours. Efficient, right?" She leaned closer, eyes gleaming. "You've thought of everything." And he had. That was the worst part. He'd thought of everything, except me. I bit down on my knuckle, rage simmering in silence. It was absurd. He was building a home down here, a second life, and she adored him for it. The mattress shifted as he leaned over her, his lips hovering close to hers. She sighed, her hand slipping to his chest. I felt dirt crumble under my nails as I gripped the wall. My body shook with fury, but also something darker, that sick cocktail of desire and disgust. I backed away before they saw me, retreating into the tunnel with my heart hammering. By the time I reached the surface, I was drenched in sweat, trembling like a man on the verge of collapse. This couldn't go on. I had watched enough, spied enough. The mole man had built his palace. My wife had made her choice. Now it was my turn. The trap was coming. And when I said it, they wouldn't laugh underground anymore. I had promised myself I wouldn't go back, that I would stay away from the trapdoor, focus on work, act like a normal man again. But promises don't mean much when your wife is sneaking into a tunnel to drink wine with a neighbor. By Monday afternoon, I was crouched by the sagging patch again, fingers pressed against the wood, waiting. I told myself it was research, reconnaissance. If I wanted to trap them, I needed timing. I needed certainty. At 2:06 p.m., right on schedule, Anna appeared with her laundry basket. The rhythm of her footsteps was so familiar I could have tapped out on a drum. She glanced around, lips parted, cheeks flushed. Then down she went, slipping into the earth as though she belonged there more than in our house. I waited until the trapdoor shut, then lowered myself after her. The air was thick, damp, already tasting of betrayal. This time I brought a plan. I had stuffed a small recorder into my pocket, one of those cheap devices that could capture hours of audio. I wanted proof. Not just my word, not just suspicions, but voices, laughter, whispers I could play back when she lied to my face. I crept forward until the chamber came into view. It was even more ridiculous than before. Greg had added a little folding chair, a cushion on it, as if he thought Anna deserved a throne in his mole kingdom. A string of plastic flowers hung over the mattress, the kind you'd see in a dollar store. He was decorating now, improving, building. Anna sat on the mattress, shoes off, toes curling in the rug. Greg poured wine with exaggerated flourish, making her laugh. My stomach turned. I crouched in the shadows, recorder clutched tight, and listened. "He has no idea," Greg was saying, smug as ever. "The man lives in front of a screen. I've dug half a city under his lawn, and he still hasn't noticed." Anna giggled. "Stop. You make it sound insane." "It is insane," he said proudly. "But so is love." I nearly gagged. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "When you're down here with me, it's like the whole world disappears. Just us, no eyes watching." She touched his face gently, and I hated her for the tenderness of it. I feel safe here. Safe. In my dirt. In my soil. I wanted to leap out, scream, tear the fairy lights from the walls. But instead I pressed the recorder's button and let their voices etch themselves into memory. Proof. Finally, undeniable proof. They drank. They laughed. She stretched out on the mattress, her dress riding higher than I could bear to watch. His hand traced lazy patterns along her thigh. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. The recorder whirred quietly in my pocket, a parasite feeding on their treachery. But then disaster nearly struck. Greg paused, frowning. He tilted his head toward the tunnel. "Did you hear that?" Anna stiffened. "What?" Sounded like movement. My heart stopped. Dirt clung to my sweaty palms as I froze, barely breathing. He stood, stepping toward the tunnel entrance, eyes narrowing. My flashlight was off, but if he came just a few feet closer, he'd see me crouched like a rat. Anna touched his arm. "It's nothing, just the house settling. Don't ruin the mood." He hesitated, then laughed. "You're right. Paranoid." He went back to her, and they sank into each other again, lips meeting this time. My stomach clenched, but relief washed over me too. He hadn't seen me. Not yet. I backed away slowly, retreating down the tunnel with the recorder still running. Each step felt like the ground itself might betray me with a groan. By the time I reached the ladder, my body shook with adrenaline. Up in the sunlight again, I gasped for air like I'd been drowning. The lawn swayed gently in the breeze. Looking so ordinary was obscene. I pulled the recorder from my pocket and pressed play. Her laugh, his voice, clear as crystal. Proof. I clutched the device to my chest, torn between triumph and despair. I could end it now, march into the kitchen, slam the recorder on the table, and let her lies collapse like the soil under my lawn. But another thought held me back. What if I waited just a little longer, gathered more, built a case so airtight she couldn't wriggle free? Yes, that was the way. Let them dig their own grave a little deeper. Because the mole man thought himself clever. My wife thought herself untouchable. But I was watching, and soon, very soon, I would strike. By the time Thursday rolled around, I felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap. I had the recorder tucked away with hours of their treachery, their laughter, their whispers, even a muffled kiss that made my jaw clench, so hard it ached. Every word was a nail in their coffin, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I wanted more than proof. I wanted to be there when it all came crashing down. And that afternoon, fate decided to help me. Anna left with her basket, right on schedule. I gave her a few minutes before following, sliding down the ladder like I'd done a dozen times. The tunnel smelled even worse now. Damp earth mixed with sweat, cologne, and candle wax. A perfume of betrayal. I crept forward until the chamber came into view. And of course, there they were. She was stretched across the mattress, one strap of her dress sliding down her arm. He was leaning over her, murmuring into her ear, his hand caressing her side. The fairy lights flickered weakly above them, as if embarrassed to illuminate such a scene. My chest burned, fury and fascination fighting for dominance. I pressed my back against the wall, dirt crumbling down my shirt. And then I heard it, a groan, not from them, from the earth itself. The wall beside me shifted just a little, a sprinkle of soil dusting my shoulder. I froze, staring at the crack that had formed in the plywood reinforcement. Another groan, louder this time. The tunnel shuddered. Greg noticed it too. He pulled back from Anna, frowning. "Did you feel that?" She sat up, clutching her dress. "What was that?" He glanced around, suddenly less confident, settling. "It's fine." I reinforced. Before he could finish, the ceiling above the chamber dropped a fistful of dirt, scattering across the mattress. Anna shrieked. I ducked instinctively, covering my head as the walls began to tremble. The fairy lights flickered wildly, half of them winking out. The mini fridge rattled in the corner, humming like a dying animal. "Greg," Anna cried, scrambling to her feet. "It's collapsing." He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the tunnel entrance. "We need to get out." My pulse roared in my ears. This was it, their secret world crumbling around them. Poetic justice, handed down by the soil itself. But then the irony struck me. If the tunnel collapsed, I was trapped too. Panic surged through me. I stumbled back, dirt raining down, the tunnel narrowing with each heartbeat. My flashlight beam swung wildly across the walls, catching glimpses of cracks spidering across the plywood. Anna and Greg barreled toward me. For a split second, his eyes met mine. Recognition flashed, then shock. "You," he started, but another chunk of ceiling crashed down, cutting him off. Anna gasped, her face paling. "Oh my God, you..." The tunnel groaned again, louder than ever. Dust filled the air, choking me. I turned and scrambled toward the ladder, every step an eternity. Behind me, I heard them following, their footsteps frantic, their breaths ragged. The ground shook violently, dirt spilling like water. I could hear the mattress collapsing under debris, the table snapping in half, bottles shattering, their perfect little hideaway being swallowed whole. I reached the ladder and clawed my way up, lungs burning, vision blurred by dust. My hand slipped on the rungs, but adrenaline dragged me upward. I burst into the sunlight, gasping, collapsing onto the grass. A moment later, Anna's head emerged, coughing, her hair wild with dirt. She pulled herself out, Greg right behind her, both of them coated in soil, eyes wide with terror. For a long moment, the three of us just sat there in the yard, heaving breaths, staring at one another. No fairy lights now, no music, just the raw, absurd truth exposed under the open sky. Anna's eyes darted between me and Greg, her lips parted, trembling. She looked like she might speak, might try to explain, but the weight of the silence crushed her. Greg wiped his face, his grin gone for once. He looked small, pathetic, like the mole he truly was. And me? I laughed, a sharp, broken laugh that bubbled out of my chest and echoed across the yard. They stared at me like I'd lost my mind, and maybe I had. My wife, my neighbor, their little subterranean fantasy, all of it buried in the dirt. The tunnel had collapsed, but the secrets had finally risen, and there was no burying them again. We sat there for what felt like hours, though it was probably only seconds, three filthy creatures gasping on the lawn like survivors of mine explosion. My wife, her hair streaked with dirt, her dress clinging to her with sweat and soil. Greg, covered head to toe in mud, his white smile finally cracked into something resembling fear. And me, laughing like a lunatic under the bright, unforgiving sun. Neighbors peeked out from porches, curious about the commotion, but none of them approached. Maybe they thought it was a gas line, maybe just another suburban mystery, not worth the trouble. But to me, it was war. You too, I spat, my laughter turning sharp. Months, beneath my lawn, like rats. Anna's eyes filled with panic. She scrambled closer, her hands out as if to soothe me. Please, it's not. Not what? I snapped. Not betrayal? Not insanity? You dug a goddamn hotel under my house. Greg tried to compose himself, brushing dirt from his arms as though that would restore his dignity. Look, man, don't you dare look mammy. I barked. You tunneled into my marriage. Literally. The absurdity of the words made me laugh again, a harsh, broken sound. Anna flinched. Greg shifted uncomfortably, suddenly less smug, more mole than man. You don't understand, Anna began, her voice trembling. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about him? I roared. You just like soil in your hair? Fairy lights underground? Drinking wine with worms. Her cheeks flushed, eyes wet. I felt alive. Down there. The word struck me harder than any shovel could. Alive. She hadn't felt alive with me, but in that ridiculous burrow with Greg the Mole Man, my chest burned, fury twisting with humiliation. Greg stepped forward, raising his hands. I never meant to. Shut up. I snapped. You decorated a tunnel like a honeymoon suite, and you didn't mean to? He faltered, lips parting, but no excuse came. Just silence. I stood, dirt falling from my clothes, and pointed toward the gaping wound in the lawn where the trapdoor had collapsed. It's over. Your little kingdom's gone. Buried. Just like this farce of a marriage. Anna reached for me, desperate. Please, just listen. But I stepped back. For once, the absurd comedy wasn't funny. Not anymore. Greg, ever the coward, tried to recover his charm. Maybe we can fix it. Reinforce the walls. Build it back. The look I gave him must have been enough, because he shut his mouth instantly. We stood in silence, the three of us coated in dirt, breathing hard. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife one more time, the ground gave a final groan. Another patch of lawn sagged, collapsing into a shallow sinkhole. A half-buried wine bottle rolled into view, clinking against a stone. The neighbors gasped audibly from their porches. A few even clapped, as though we'd staged some absurd backyard theater. My humiliation was complete. Anna sobbed quietly. Greg stared at the ground. And me? I laughed again, because what else was left? A tunnel under my marriage. A mole for a neighbor. A wife who felt alive only underground. The showdown wasn't fists or shouts or blood. It was dirt and silence and the undeniable truth that everything had collapsed, literally and figuratively. I turned away from them, from the sinkhole, from the gawking neighbors, because there was only one chapter left in this farce. and it would be mine to write. I used to think endings were neat. That life, like the movies Anna loved, wrapped itself in bows. The hero triumphant, the villain defeated, the couple reconciled. But real endings are ugly, awkward, and sometimes hilarious in the worst possible way. Mine began the morning after the collapse. The sinkhole still yawned in the yard, an open wound in the grass. Neighbors slowed their morning jogs to stare, pretending not to. Children pointed. Someone left a flyer for a construction company on my porch, as if a slab of concrete could patch over betrayal. Inside, Anna moved like a ghost. She didn't hum. She didn't smile. She barely spoke, except to say my name once in a whisper, like she was afraid of me. I let her walk around in silence, her hands trembling when she brushed past me. Greg stayed invisible. Coward. I knew he was in his house, probably scrubbing dirt from his nails, plotting a new excuse, maybe even sketching blueprints for a fresh tunnel. Mole men don't quit. They just dig somewhere else. I spent the day staring at my recorder. That cheap little device now held my entire marriage. Her laugh is flattery. They're whispers in the dark. Proof undeniable. A smoking gun in digital form. I press play again and again, torture myself with every note of her happiness. By nightfall, I decided. Anna was at the table, pretending to read a magazine. I placed the recorder in front of her. Press play. Her own voice filled the kitchen, soft, warm, almost girlish as she whispered, "I feel safe here." She flinched as if struck. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide and shimmering. "Please." I held up a hand. "Don't. No excuses." The recording played on, Greg's smug chuckle echoing through the room. I watched her crumble under the weight of her own words. The silence between us was thicker than any soil he'd ever piled up. Finally, I stopped the recording. "You buried us," I said quietly. "And for what? Fairy lights? A rug in the dirt." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. But pity had no place here. Not anymore. I stood, walked the back door, and stared at the sinkhole. The air still reeked faintly of soil and cologne. That ridiculous kingdom was gone now, buried like it should have been from the start. But the damage was permanent. I looked back at Anna, her shoulders shaking. My voice came out calm, colder than I'd ever heard it. "Pack your things." Her sobs broke into a gasp. "Where will I go?" I almost laughed. "Ask your mole man." For a long time, she just sat there, trembling, her face hidden. Then, slowly, she rose and went to the bedroom. I listened to the faint rustle of drawers, the thud of a suitcase pulled from the closet. Each sound was another spadeful of dirt on the grave of our marriage. I poured myself a drink and stepped onto the porch. The night air was cool, the stars distant. For once, I felt something close to peace. Across the fence, a light flickered in Greg's window. I imagined him pacing, frantic, rehearsing apologies he'd never dare speak aloud. Maybe he thought he'd won. Maybe he thought Anna would knock on his door with her suitcase, ready to crawl back underground with him. Let him think it. Because even if she did, it wouldn't last. The tunnel had collapsed, and so had their fantasy. You can't build love on dirt. It caves, and eventually. I sat there until the drink was gone, listening to the quiet hum of the night. No scraping, no digging, just silence. It was over, and as absurd, humiliating, and filthy as it had been, I almost smiled, because in the end, Greg hadn't stolen my wife. She had buried herself.